there's a lot of news happening right now, Wilson, whether it's transfer portal or high school recruiting or even bowl preparation. Let's start with the Heisman Trophy winner. It's good to see you, Wilson. Good morning. But the Heisman Trophy winner yesterday made it official. I don't think surprising to the college football world that he is deciding to forgo the ReliaQuest Bowl and begin his draft preparation, and he made that official yesterday on his birthday.
Yes, he did. And good morning, Jordy. How are you doing today? It was, like you said, expected that this was coming. It was just kind of a matter of what time he was going to announce it. And I guess in retrospect, it made a lot of sense to do it yesterday. He turned 23. He had scheduled a few charity events. One was with LSU's whole football team. One was in the morning with Raising Cane's, doing a bike giveaway over there with Todd Graves. And so it kind of made sense between those events to come out with the video that he did. And this was something that LSU's certainly been aware of for a little while, but he was just a matter of when Jaden wanted to come out with it. And so now we get to see Garrett Nuss in the bowl game and get a preview of maybe what next year looks like. And so, this is kind of what Jaden felt like was the right time. He said that he had poured everything he had into college football, and that this sort of just felt like the right decision for him. And I don't blame him one bit, because all he really had was something to lose, really, in this game, risking injury or something like that, and possibly damaging his draft stock if he were to get hurt. So it is good, but he also said that he was going to be at the game, and that's not something you usually hear from folks who opt out. But he wants to be there and support his teammates.
Yeah, and his teammates, a couple of them, it seems like are going to play, are his top targets, Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors. This is something that we've speculated and talked a little bit about before here on this segment and on this show. I guess I'm not surprised to hear that. I wonder how long they'll be on the field, but it is good to hear that Nussmeier will have at least two of college football's best to throw at for a bit of that game.
Yeah, reaffirmed with Malik himself yesterday that he was going to play. He said yes. And Brian, that was right after Brian Kelly had said that they don't expect any other opt-outs. And we've seen them on the field practicing, and we saw them in the video that LSU released last week, but as I understand it, they've continued to practice, and we're actually going to see later today at practice, and so we'll be able to see them there practicing as well. And it's kind of a good thing for Garrett Nussmeier and a way to be able to properly maybe judge in some ways exactly how he plays, because the only thing that you're really taking out of the offense from what we understand is Jaden and putting in Garrett. So you've got this, everything else is going to be constant around him. And so that he's going to have kind of the best chance to succeed. It's not like he's going to be playing with the twos. And so we'll be able to really get a good sense of how he plays in this game, because everything else around him will be the same on this offense. The only thing that might be different is maybe some schematic stuff where Brian Kelly said they're going to fit the offense to him. It'll be fascinating to see kind of what that looks like, and how much they're airing it out, because we all know that's what Garrett likes to do.
On the same day, some news was made about one player foregoing the bowl game. You get the news that Kiren Lacy is coming back next year. I don't know necessarily if that's breaking news, but it does mean that you have a veteran in that wide receiver room next season. What's it mean for Lacy's presence on next year's team?
He's got a chance to be wide receiver one, and we'll see if he can kind of step up and take that mantle. 460-ish yards this season, 7 touchdowns. Kiren actually is leading LSU in yards per catch right now at 19.3, and that's just slightly ahead of Malik and Brian. He's had some drops earlier in the year, but he kind of got past those and ended up starting the last 8 games. Now you've got somebody with some experience coming back next year, and that's really significant because, obviously Zavon Thomas had 40 catches over at Mississippi State, but in terms of LSU's team this year, only Chris Hilton and Aaron Anderson are the only other receivers who had catches. And they didn't have a whole lot of them. And so LSU's obviously got some freshmen, too, who really like Shelton Sampson, of course, Jalen Brown, Kyle Parker. But none of them had a catch this year. And that's hard to rely on going into next season. We just look at guys like Malik and Brian and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson all had their real breakouts as juniors. And so it might take a year or two for these freshmen to turn into those kinds of players, and maybe they can contribute more next season. But Kiren's somebody now who's played a good bit of football and is going to be able to be at least, maybe more consistent presence in that room because of what he's already done. It really helps to bring him back and have somebody who has produced a little bit more already.
Wilson, we saw and knew LSU was in the quarterback market in the portal. They land on A.J. Swan yesterday, a guy out of Vanderbilt who comes in with starting experience. What'd you make of the pickup?
It kind of fit what LSU needed out of a transfer quarterback. You know, AJ is somebody who's got some starting experience at Vanderbilt. He started 6 games this season, started a few games as a freshman as well. You know, even as a freshman, he went 159 straight pass attempts to start his career without an interception. It was the best start to a career in that regard in the Southeastern Conference since 2002. But he also had some struggles. You know, he is, I think, just under 60% completion percentage in his career. He threw 7 interceptions this year. 3 of them were in one game against Kentucky. But he's somebody who can come in who has started a little bit so he can compete with Garrett Nuss, and will let, you know, LSU in that way can let the cream rise to the top and see if AJ can unseat him. But if not, then he's a reliable, or at least a more experienced backup. You know, there's a good insurance policy there because Ricky Collins has only thrown 2 passes in his career. And so now you've got somebody who's played a little bit more football, regardless of who wins the job, as long as they can keep Garrett as well. You know, whoever your number 2 is next year ends up being a little bit more experienced, and that's just a much more comfortable position to be in. And we'll see kind of what AJ can do, you know, maybe a little bit more in spring practice. And I would assume, I think anyway, that's when he's coming. I'm not sure, I don't have that confirmed yet necessarily, but we'll be able to get a better sense of that as he's practicing exactly who's winning that job. And regardless of who wins it, LSU's got a more comfortable position now in its quarterback room going into next year because it's got somebody there with a little bit more experience.
You mentioned Zavon Thomas when we were talking about the wide receiver room. He pledged to LSU earlier this week out of the portal from Mississippi State. Thomas, more of a dual threat guy, can help you in the receiving room. Also a proven punt returner, Wilson. We talked about that element earlier in the show that, look, LSU's probably going to regress from being the number 1 offense in the country next season. It's going to be tough to do that back-to-back. They still could be good. Rather than the number 1 unit remains to be seen. They need to get back to a game-breaking threat at special teams and punt returner. Does Zavon Thomas give him that guy?
He should. I mean, on the surface, and statistics, you know, he's averaged 12.6 yards per punt return in his career. And get this, LSU this season has had 6 punt returns.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow. That's
yeah.
a wow.
Zavon himself had quite a bit more than that. And he's, you know, already had a punt return for a touchdown in his career. He also brings an element in the kickoff return game that LSU necessarily had. But particularly in the punt return game, that seems like where he's going to make an immediate difference, regardless of even what he does at wide receiver necessarily. If he can be an electric returner and at least get them set up a little bit better on drives, that's going to be a major difference for this offense, for this team. Because like you said, this past year, they only had the 6 punt returns. They didn't need any more because this offense was so good. Just get the ball back to Jaden Daniels, let him and Malik and all of those guys work. But next year, yeah, you'd like to be able to make a little bit more of a difference there. And Zavon seems like he's got the kind of talent in the return game to be able to do that.
They pick up another one in Jordan Gilbert, the safety, a Baton Rouge native here. Obviously, both of these guys have Louisiana ties. We've seen that. Is that the angle? I mean, when Louisiana talent jumps in the portal, LSU seems to be first in line there.
Yeah, that's always been a strategy for Brian Kelly and the staff ever since the beginning. He has talked about, you know, wanting to get guys from Louisiana, or at least with a Louisiana tie of some kind, back to LSU if they go into the transfer portal. So anytime anytime a Louisiana guy enters the portal, I think everybody's eyebrows kind of raised and say, "Oh, is he the next one?" Because it's a logical sort of thing for LSU to do. You know, there's this tie here with this being the only in-state Power 5 school, that LSU's got that advantage in that way, and it's been working that over the last few years in the transfer portal under this staff. And Jordan's another example of that. And it's also a great addition for them at safety. A guy who started, of course, 10 games back in 2022 with A&M, started the first 2 this year before his shoulder injury. That's somebody who should be able to slide immediately, or at least I think he can go ahead and pencil into the lineup next year back there at safety.
Do you get an idea of, or Wilson, how do you report this Sage Ryan story? Is he in the portal or not?
It's interesting because, of course, he said that he is would be entering the transfer portal effective immediately. Those were his words. But, like we said, apparently he's not actually officially in the portal yet. Sometimes the paperwork takes a few days. We'll see if he's at practice. I think that would be one thing that's notable to look for. But that would be an indication, of course, that maybe he's coming back out of the portal. It's hard to tell. At this point, all we know is that Sage has still said that he would be entering the transfer portal. LSU had a team event yesterday at Walmart where it was shopping with kids. Sage Ryan was not there. And so as far as we know, he's still, those are still his plans. And unless something changes, I think that would be I guess you could say assumption on that, because that's what he said publicly at this point.
Yeah. Wilson, obviously, I mean, does that hurt the corner room or the safety room more if he's not there?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because he's played both positions. Based on what LSU probably has right now, it probably hurts the cornerback room more because he started there all year. LSU right now at corner is pretty thin. It was kind of this funny moment in Walmart yesterday. We were with Brian Kelly and at one point and watching them shop and stuff, and he saw Zy Alexander, who had a crutch and was limping. Clearly had some kind of brace on underneath because of the leg injury that he suffered. And Brian Kelly cracked a joke about maybe he's like, "Oh, you're looking better. Maybe you can actually play at the bowl game," and because we're so low on corners. And obviously, he was just kidding. Brian Kelly jokes like Zion's not going to be able to play, but they are really thin there. With Javian Toviano and Ashton Stamps and Jeremiah Hughes are probably the only ones who are going to be available in the bowl game right now after LaTerrence Welch transferred out, and J.K. Johnson. We don't know if he would be able to get back yet. We saw him yesterday as well. No cast or anything like that, but the last update we had on him during the season was that he was just getting back to anti-gravity running, not able to put run pressure on and run at that point. That was maybe a month ago or so, and so it probably hurts the cornerback room more because there's more uncertainty and fewer bodies in that room.
Tomorrow is the early signing period, Wilson, for college football and the fall athletes. What do you make of LSU? Do you anticipate any news, anything to break, or just kind of status quo here?
I anticipate status quo. Everything I've heard is that they expect all 27 of their current commitments to sign, and that to not be very much drama, which is certainly different from what we're used to on signing days in the past. Maybe they'll sign Cohen Eccles later in the period. I think he's expected to make his decision on Friday, but it sounds like maybe he might go to Auburn. We'll see how that shakes out. But it seems like LSU's really, in terms of finishing up this class, the attention now is really on February. Maybe trying to land Dominic McKinley and Terry Bussey. But in terms of what's going to happen here tomorrow, I think it's going to be very quiet and kind of regular, almost a boring signing day, but that's a better position for LSU to be in instead of trying to find out if it's landing any key commitments on signing day. It's already got everybody in the class wrapped up, and they're all expected to sign tomorrow.
Wilson, any news on the front? I know nothing officially being reported, but anything kind of behind the scenes that you're hearing on a timeline that Kelly may be looking to? He talked about the coaching evaluations being a part of last week. Is there anything that could come from that?
Yeah, we'll see. I don't have anything firm in that regard in terms of a timeline because, like you said, Brian Kelly said that when he last spoke that evaluations are a week away. That would put them about now, but LSU was trying to, the dead period just started. So if he hasn't done his evaluations already, which I believe he has probably been doing his evaluations really for a while, then they'd be going on right about now. But in terms of timeline, it seemed like they wanted to certainly get through the dead period. They've gotten through that, and so now we'll see if he starts to make some moves. If he doesn't start to make them now, then he's probably waiting until after the bowl game. And then that's when something would happen, or at least something more firm, and we'll get a better idea. But unfortunately, I don't have a great idea right now because I think Brian Kelly's kept it pretty close to the vest in terms of what his timeline's going to be.
Yeah. Wilson, one from our listeners, and we'll get you out of here. Appreciate you, buddy. Good to see you. Tackett Curtis's name goes into the portal. I've said about the linebacking class here in this recruiting cycle that it's as good as any position group that they've recruited since Brian Kelly has been here. And obviously you've got Harold Perkins and Greg Penn returning at that position along with Whit Weeks. Have you heard anything on Tackett Curtis, and could he be in play for LSU?
I haven't heard anything just yet because I think that just happened yesterday, or maybe like late yesterday. But that's one of those things where we're talking about, Louisiana enters the portal. Everybody kind of raises an eyebrow. That's one of them certainly, and especially a guy who played a good bit of football this past year at USC. But he was always headed out to USC during the recruitment process. So it'd be interesting to see if LSU wants to get involved in this because, like you said, it's not in a bad way at linebacker, especially with Weeks coming back too. And you've got some guys in that room that you start to feel pretty good about. But if you can add him, it's certainly not a bad thing because of what he's already done as a freshman over at USC and being a Louisiana native. So we'll see. I think I'm not totally sure yet if they're going to go in that direction, if there's interest on LSU's end. but it's certainly an intriguing one to keep an eye on as another Louisiana native.
Merry Christmas, Wilson. Have a great weekend and a great week. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
I expect to see the
Merry Christmas, everybody. Y'all have a good one.
That's right. Later, buddy.
Oh, no, he took him out.
Oh, no. Did he really? Damn.
Yeah, we saw him at Walmart yesterday. He'd already undone it.
Damn. You're up next, Wilson.
That's right.
Hair's too
Pass
good,
the
bro.
torch.
Later, man.
Me and you.
There he is.
Bye,
Wilson
y'all.
Alexander.